Welcome to Adobe Photoshop Elements Maximum Performance. Hi, I'm Mark Gaylor.
Okay, there's a new feature or filter available in Photoshop Elements 7. Okay, hard to spot given that it's not got any bells and whistles attached to it, but let's take a look at what it does. Okay, I'm going to duplicate the background layer, Ctrl J, and we're going to apply the filter to this layer 1. Let's go up to the filter menu and try and dig it out from where it's hiding. We'll come down to the blur menu, and yes, it's surface blur, formerly available only in the full version of Photoshop and now available in Photoshop Elements 7. Okay, slightly confusing to use in that we have two sliders instead of one, currently available in Gaussian blur. Okay, so let's just take a look at what each of them does in turn. Okay, we'll set both of them to around about 20 and then take a look at what each of them does. Okay, so here we have nice surface blur, and if we take that slider too low on the radius, then it's going to get a little bit bumpy, and there we have some of the bumpy tones appearing. So ideally we want to just push this to the minimum amount that gives us nice smooth contours around the face, and somewhere between 15 and 20 will perhaps do it for this image. Okay, let's just move the dialog box over to the other side. One of the nice things you may be noticing here is the surface blur is staying behind the edge of the face here, and also not spilling over onto these eyelashes. And that's the magic of surface blur. It's got edge detection. Okay, so let's take a look at what is doing this. Okay, it's the threshold slider. If we have the threshold too high, then the blur is going to spill over the edges, just as it does with Gaussian blur. So the idea is to maybe start high and then move back until the blur finds the edges. Okay, the threshold is dictating the contrast of those edges, and as soon as it picks up an edge of a particular contrast level, it's going to hold the blur behind that edge. Okay, and just a little bit more perhaps, and now as you can see it's starting to pick up those edges, and a little bit lower, and it's picking up all of the edges including the eyelashes. Okay, let's just apply that. It looks a little bit heavy. Okay, so what we're going to do is we could either just drop the opacity of this layer down to 50% or so, so we've got a partial surface blur, or perhaps a more sophisticated way of controlling where we want the blur and how much we want the blur is to actually put in a layer mask. As you know, with Photoshop Elements we can't have layer masks on layers, so what we need to do is the next best thing, which is to create an adjustment layer. Okay, levels, or any adjustment layer will do. Because we don't actually want to make the adjustment, we're just going to hijack the adjustment layer mask. And here it is. Okay, so let's group or clip these two layers together, holding down the Alt key, and I'm going to group this to the mask. If I fill this layer mask with black, Edit, Fill Layer, and choose black as my contents, then none of the surface blur will be viewable, or visible even. Okay, but if we pick up the brush tool, just press the B to select the brush tool from the tools panel, increase the size of the brush, and I'm also going to increase the softness of the brush, holding down the Shift key, and the open square bracket key will make a nice soft brush tip for us. And then painting at 50%, just press the 5 key to enter 50% in the options bar. I can then paint my surface blur into here, except I'm not going to be painting anything until I switch the foreground color to white, as we're painting in a mask. And as I paint, I'm going to paint in 50% of my surface blur into this layer. There's no need to be careful about the edges because the threshold slider in the surface blur dialog is holding that. All we're doing is we're painting the locality of where we need most blur, and as I paint multiple times, then I'm going to get an increased value that I'm going to be applying with that surface blur. And so there we have it, how we can use surface blur in Photoshop Elements 7 to smooth skin tones. To unleash the hidden performance of Photoshop Elements, take a look at my book and DV training package, Adobe Photoshop Elements Maximum Performance. It contains over 7 hours of movie support, high-resolution project images such as camera raw images, TIFFs with saved selections, and multi-layered Photoshop files of the completed projects. The DVD also contains maximum performance actions to fast-track your workflows, and loadable presets such as the new Smart Brush presets, layer styles, and a royalty-free stock library, and a bonus project